I began art journaling scripture with a word study. One of my first words was rock, and I used a concordance to look up every instance of that word in the NIV translation of my Bible. Then I wrote them out with some context when necessary. And I also created an illustration for key lessons I was learning, verses that really spoke to me in that season. And at some point, I really wanted to improve my rocks and sought out drawings and videos to learn from. Since then, there have been many scripture responses that incorporated rocks or stones in one way or another. So if you're planning to journal scripture or currently journaling scripture, you might tackle rocks too. So I'm sharing my process with this latest rock that I used to illustrate James 5, verses 8 and 9. I started by reserving some specks or highlights of white along the rim of the rock. If you have a white no-bleed marker or jelly roll pen, you could add the white highlights later, but I'm using this rubbery masking fluid to save the areas now. I'll unmask them later after I paint freely over it. I covered the parts I wanted to protect, and then poured a small amount of the fluid on my tray and just dipped an old toothbrush in it, and I splattered it all over the area in a fine mist. I dried that with a cool blow dryer, then repeated the process with a mixture of brown watercolors to create more texture. And then I began layering colors, beginning with the lightest colors, the lightest shades. Some of those I will build on with additional layers. Others will be the lightest part of the rock. I'm dabbing the colors and trying to create a feel for both jagged and smooth edges and areas and angles. I'm letting some of the paint dry with strong edges while letting others fade out by brushing over them with my damp brush and letting them bleed into that dampness. I'm trying to picture where the shadows might be and will continue to layer and darken those areas. I'm also hoping to avoid painting over all the initial lighter areas where the sun might be hitting. I found myself being more observant since I began art journaling. I'm often surprised by how little I really notice around me. I had to learn to stop and really see all the colors and details in God's creation to be better able to translate that into an illustration, like noticing all the colors in a rock. I'm dabbing in colors like blues and reds and greens and gray as I build this one up. I'm letting some of the paint puddle in areas and dabbing away other areas with the tissue. And another way to build up the kind of texture you want on a rock is by sprinkling a little salt on the paint and letting it dry. Or you can even lay some cling wrap over it to create some veins where the film wrinkles. I've switched from a round brush to a flat brush now, and I'm using it almost dry. I'm just picking up a dab of moisture so I can drag the paint across for a more rugged, chiseled look. I'm going to alternate the dry brush with a wet brush to try and convey different angles too. This illustration is going to be more of a cliff than an actual rock, so I'm not really giving it that round or square or overall shape that you generally find with rocks. When I'm happy with the colors, I'll rub off the masking fluid and use a black fine tip micron pen to add some black veins along the various edges of colors, and that'll bring in some contrast and suggest different angles and the movement of the cliff. It definitely takes some patience to build up all the layers, so you have to decide you're going to enjoy the peaceful process. Worship music absolutely helps. If it starts looking too choppy, or if I just want to give it a more unified look, I'll add a layer of one color across the whole thing. Of course, this could also be a sign that I am tiring of the whole process and just want to get it over, running out of patience. So then I make sure to completely dry everything before using my fingers or an eraser to rub off the masking fluid. That's where you can add some white highlights with a jelly roll pen or a bleed-proof white marker, and add some black lines for deep veins or shadows along the bottom if you're creating a rock. This project, I finished up my journaling with James 5, verses 8 and 9. You too, be patient and stand firm because the Lord's coming is near. Don't grumble against one another, brothers and sisters, or you will be judged. The judge is standing at the door. God bless you, and thank you for watching.